What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Stereotherapy. I'm your host, Lisa, and this is episode 108. Today in the show, I was joined by Eliza and Ethan of Tiny Tomboy. Sam, we'll have to catch you next time. You were missed on this one, but it was such a great conversation with Eliza and Ethan surrounding the importance of their music scene. I think a lot of us, when we think about music scenes, we want to talk about the New Yorks, the LAs, even Nashville, right? Like it's up and coming. A lot of people talk about that, but to hear about Denver and what's so special about that. And you can tell that it's such a tight-knit thing. It was so wonderful for me, not only as hosting this podcast, but I know as you guys listening to this show, to kind of look into your own music scenes and what's going around you and to make sure that we're supporting those and being that support system to bands like Tiny Tomboy. So I loved where that conversation went. We dive all into the early days with Eliza and creating a made-up band, Schooltastic, and where that led her on her journey. And we dive into how music has made an impact in Ethan and Eliza's lives and where that is today. Of course, we touch on their release, Psychic Scar, that has been out for a while. I really love this one, and I think it's such a cool opportunity, especially previous episode, I had a metalcore band, and then to have a band like Tiny Tomboy that I think is really doing something different in the music world. So it was really great to dive into that creation, any struggles they had in it, and obviously their video for Dead Dog that is really cool and creative. I love a good music video because I think they are a lost art. They are important, and I love that we touched on that. All links below to check out Tiny Tomboy. I would love if you gave them a listen, you followed them, and support them as well. But let's just get into it. Here's my conversation with Eliza and Ethan of Tiny Tomboy. So the first question we ask everybody, because we want to kind of take it back to your first journey in music and what was that? What are your first memories of falling in love with music, whether it was a time, a place, or a record? I know, Eliza, and doing like a little bit of research, I know you started playing guitar when you were 8 and you ended up making like a fake band or a pretend band, I should say, a Schooltastic, I think it was called, which I think was so cool because like I remember making up songs and I would pretend that I was singing, but I never made a pretend band. For you, would you say those were your first early memories of falling in love with music?
Yeah, definitely that. And I just like learning how to play guitar for the first time. And there's like an after school lesson at my school. And I remember I learned like the Batman theme
Hmm.
and like the pentatonic scale and like was like trying to like rip a solo when I was like 8 years old. And it did not sound very good, but it was kind of when I first got into it.
I give you credit because I have no musical bone, nothing in my body. I love music. It's so like it's everything to me. But even trying to teach myself like acoustic guitar, and again, I didn't have lessons, so I probably was setting myself up already for failure. But I just couldn't do it. And so anyone that can figure anything out, especially at a young age, when I tried, I think I was like 15. So I was older, but even then, I'm like, now I almost want to go back. Everyone I talked to on the podcast, I'm like, maybe there was just something not there with me. But it's always so cool to hear everyone how they started out, and that's so interesting. And what about you, Ethan?
I don't really have a particular memory that sticks out to me, but my older brother is a really good guitar player, and I remember being young, and he was always in like the school of rock bands, and I would see him perform a lot, and I would think like this is really cool. But obviously, he played guitar, and I was like, well, in my little brain, I was like, well, I'm never going to be as good as him, and like I want to have a unique instrument to play, so I learned the bass, which was like the, I guess, second best option, the most adjacent to guitar.
Yeah, a lot of people tell me that if I had trouble with guitar, to try bass because it's easier. Now, I don't know if they were just trying to tell me that and trying to make it. Do you feel that's true, or do you feel like
I think so.
they're just
I
trying to
mean,
be nice?
it's definitely easier to learn. I think they obviously serve different roles in like whatever musical genre you're performing or playing, but in general, like becoming good at bass is, I would say, easier than becoming good at guitar. The point of entry is a little bit more accessible.
You definitely have to have a lot more strength, like hand strength, though, to
Mhm.
play. Like, I can, like, I can play around on bass, but if I'm like playing a whole song through that's like kind of got more to it, I'm like struggling to get through the song.
Yeah, that's I think it. Think about who I watch and who plays, and when I watch them play something like the bass, you're right. Like you would have to have that. So I don't know. I mean, I guess my parents they thought Guitar for Dummies was the way to go, and I'm like, it was definitely not the way to go. So it's always awesome when I get to talk to people that play music because you get it, and it's such a passion of yours. So I love to hear that, and obviously talking about where you're from is a big thing we like to talk about in music scenes. They're so important. I want you guys to kind of take us to Denver and take us to your music scene. What for you guys, and you guys can both answer in your own way, what is so special about the music scene for you guys?
I love that like it's not competitive at all. Like everybody's friends with each other. They're all really cool people, and we go out to support each other and go to each other's shows. And it's just like I don't know. I work from home, so I like don't meet anybody through work, and it's like really the way that I've found community in Denver. Yeah,
Yeah, I can relate
very
to that a
welcoming.
lot. I can relate to that. I kind of sort of work from home. I work with kids and I do like nannying and it is you need that community because I felt like where's my community? Where is that? And finding that in a music scene was so important to me. So I can definitely relate to that. And I love to hear it's not as competitive because some people get on here and even back home, people might not want to hear this, but parts of Chicago were very competitive and almost like, okay, well, if you got on a bigger show, they would maybe look at you a certain way and it's different out here in New Jersey where it's competitive, but in a different way. It's almost like everybody wants to see you win, even though it is competitive. Like I found more of a community out here in New Jersey and less of, okay, well, why did they get put on this or why did they get that? Or like me not being in a band, like why did they get this interview or this and that? And so I love to hear that other scenes aren't as competitive because I know it can be a struggle if it is. So I love to hear that. And anything for you, Ethan, to add?
Yeah, just kind of to echo Eliza's point, like there is a very strong sense of community here, especially within like the music scene. So as she was saying, like we'll often go to like our friends' shows, and a lot of our friends will come to ours. And we've talked to a lot of people who said like, oh, like the music scene is good, but most of the time like our friends won't show up for us, and most of the time it's nothing personal. But I think the fact that people are willing to uplift each other here and like know that that's kind of part of what makes like a community so great, I think is really special.
It is. I love to hear that because especially like I've never been to Denver. It looks beautiful. And I can only imagine you really get a sort of inspiration from being there too and where you live because I know I've heard it from people here in New Jersey. They get the inspiration from like the Stone Pony and all the people that have come from here. So I do. I love to hear that. And part of our podcast is that intersection of music and mental health. So kind of we've talked about the music scene, but for you guys, how is just music in general made an impact on your life and kind of been an aid to your mental health or anything you were going through when other things didn't really work or stick?
For me, in a way, it's being in a band and playing music has like really changed the way I view myself. And I grew up like a super shy kid, like kind of debilitatingly shy in some situations. And it definitely helped me overcome that and just feel a lot more confident in myself. And I'm also just meeting people all the time through it. So I feel like more comfortable meeting new people. And yeah, I guess in the act of writing music as well is like if I'm really like feeling something and I sort of like kind of freaking out inside and I can't figure out a way to cope with it, if I like start writing something, it really does help me process things I'm going through. And sometimes it feels like it's like the only thing that'll help me.
I can only imagine because me as a music listener, how it makes me feel. I can only imagine someone that's writing these things that then as a listener you can connect to. It can be so healing. And we've heard a couple of people on here say that same thing where that's how they can process whether it's a relationship, a friendship, or just a tough, difficult time. For some reason, just being able to put a pen to paper makes such a difference in that healing process where you have your friends or you have your family but there was something so special about that and I'm with you. I was always a shy person and being with music has just helped break out of that. 'Cause I always find it weird when people say music isn't important to them, or, you know, they don't really listen to music. I'm like, how can you not? Like, it's everything. So I think music has helped me in a different way, but in a similar way too, Eliza. So I can definitely relate to you. And what about you, Ethan?
I think the biggest thing for me is like music as kind of an outlet and a resource for self-regulation. Like I think a lot of times when I'm feeling, you know, any sort of way that's not like very positive, I'll like kind of instinctively like pick up a guitar or like play music, you know, like listen to music. And I like agree with what Eliza was saying as how it can be like a great coping mechanism for dealing with like hard times. It's interesting. It's very rare that I'm like in a really good mood and I'm like, I want to like play guitar and like write a song, you know? It's always been kind of this emotional outlet for me. And then with respect to the band, it's like, you know, everybody has good days and bad days, and you have rehearsals, you know, you have rehearsals once or twice a week. You're going to have good rehearsals, or rehearsals where you feel really good, and then rehearsals where you feel really bad. But a lot of the times what I find is like if I'm in a bad mood and like I like start rehearsing with like Eliza and Sam, like by the end of the rehearsal I'm like energized again and I feel like, hey, like, you know, like this is something good that we're doing. And yeah, how even like the act of like playing music with other people can be healing too.
Yeah, oh, I love the way you put that because it is such a thing. And I can only imagine, like I think about like my favorite singers or bands I see play, and you can just see like maybe I'm sure maybe before that show, whether it was getting to that show or anything that day, but like you see them on stage with their instrument or whether it's just their voice, you can tell it's such a cathartic thing for them. So I love that. And obviously I want to talk about Psychic Scar. It came out, it's been out. What's been the response to this record?
It's been pretty positive from at least what I've heard.
Yeah, nobody's told us it sucks, so that's
Yeah.
probably a good sign, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm super proud of it. It's like, you know, the first album we put out that's really a representation of like the three of us together, I would say.
I think just like saying how like there has been a lot of like positive support from like people, from our friends and also from strangers, you know, who we've never met before, people like reaching out to us and coming to our release show even, like that was like a bit really special moment for us to be headlining a show where there was like hundreds of people there to see us. It felt really special.
Can only imagine like spending time on something and pouring so much into it of yourselves and then presenting it and then having that and that many people show up for you. I always say too, even with me, if I get like a couple listens and I picture like how many people could be in a room, and I think that just has to be such a feeling you probably can't even describe. You know, you could say, oh, it feels great, but pouring that much into it. And anyone I get on here when they say how long it takes to make a record. And me as a listener, it's like, okay, I put on my favorite album or song, not realizing the time it takes to get everything the way you want it. And even then, maybe you might listen back and be like, oh, maybe we should have done this, but for whatever reason, it fits and it's perfect. So I love that. And like, what would you guys say you guys are most proud of? Whether it was the process, maybe how you handled something, and now that it's out there, looking back and now looking at it now finished and out there, what are you most proud of?
I think I'm honestly proud that we kind of took our time with it because it took a really long time to put together, like from the time we like wrote the first songs, probably 3 years. And it's not even very long, but you know, we're all busy. We all had other things going on in our lives, and I feel like when I like listen back to it, there's nothing that I'm like, oh, we should have fixed that. We should have, and like the last album we put out, I definitely felt that way listening back to it. I was like, oh, why did I? Because I mixed that one myself. So I was like, why did I do that? Like the balance is so off, and it was nice to like outsource some things for this one. You know, have somebody else mix it and master, and I like feel really confident in how it turned out.
That's awesome. And anything you want to add, Ethan?
I'm super proud, I think, of us like sticking together through
Oh
it.
yeah.
We're all like, I don't know, we're young adults, so we're all going through a bunch of like changes at once. And I'm just like proud of us for like being in a band for this amount of time, you know, like this is like the longest I've ever been in any band, and it feels like, I don't know, there have been a lot of hard moments in our lives, like personally and also between us too. So it's yeah, I'm just happy that we got it done, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like crazy to me because we were just a college band when we started, and we like went through COVID too,
Mhm.
and it's like kind of amazing that we all have graduated college and are now like living together and still doing it. And I feel like we've definitely, I don't know, we've made so much progress and would not have been able to do anything near what we've been doing now if we hadn't stuck together. And we also get along well, so that helps with it. But
Yeah, that's a lot to be proud of. And I think just now, think about the world today. There's so much going on and just life. And then you add, okay, what are you passionate about in music and your band? Like, a band itself is a whole separate relationship, I'm sure, than like everything else you're going through. And I think I don't know if anyone's really ever said that. I mean, maybe they have been in a different way, but I think that is something to be so proud of to like school itself is such a big thing and I think something to be proud of in itself and I love the sound of the record. I think for me it's interesting because I just had like the two polar opposites. I had like a metalcore band on Saturday. So I was like, okay, I have to get into this and get in the mood. What am I listening to here? And then listening to Tiny Tomboy, I was like, okay, this is the polar opposite, but in such a good way because it almost brought me back to like when I was in college and that sound and those bands I would go see play, especially in Chicago. And I went to art school. So like being around that and it really just was like, okay, I love this. And having those vocals and just, it's needed. This kind of band is needed. And at least for me, it's so saturated right now with like the pop punks and then your metalcores, right? And then there's a place for that. So to hear this, I was like, this, I was trying to think like what it reminded me of. And of course, I could say like, okay, Phoebe Bridgers or Julian Baker, but in a sound all its own. So I appreciated when I got to hear this record and when it came out and was like, I kind of need this sometimes. Like the loud stuff is great, but this is needed too. So yeah, I love it. And I appreciated like even Vegas. And I think that's so relatable. Like when you maybe obviously Eliza, like you writing it from your experience, but someone else listening to it, we all have that moment, maybe running into somebody that like wronged us or whatever it is, and then having that moment, like just I even listening to it again today to put it on to get in the mood to talk to you guys, I was like, this is so relatable to a 20 something, a 30 something, even like a 40, 50, like whoever. Like I love that. And it's just it's so real and authentic and it comes off that way. So I appreciated that song for sure. I was like, this is my go-to this year, which is either a good or bad thing, right? But
Yeah.
for you, and it's so honesty and writing these honest lyrics, do you think that's healing in a lot of ways for you? That when you write these songs and you go through it in your own way when you're writing it and then getting to perform it, is there sort of different healing element to that?
yeah, I would say so. And Vegas in particular was like one where like this had just happened to me where I
Mhm.
ran into this guy and I like, it had been a long time since anything had happened and since I'd really like thought about him in that way. And then kind of a lot of stuff just came flooding back and I was like really angry and like, I don't know. And I like immediately like wrote that song and it was a very much of like spur of the moment, train of thought kind of deal and it definitely helped me process all of that. Um, and I think the process of playing stuff live too is like it might have this like crazy resonance when you're writing it, and then like the more you play it, the more it kind of, you know, loses that edge that it has, and it doesn't affect you as much, and the situation also doesn't affect you as much. I think they kind of go together. Like, the more you play it, the less you're even thinking about it in a way.
Because that's why I always like to ask anyone that is wrote these songs because it's like I want to hear from that. Because me listening to it, it's like, okay, I feel this way, But again, like hearing you talk about that, it's like I can only imagine how would a healing thing. And it's a real life thing. And there's like so many things. It's like I could only imagine. Like I wish, like now being in my mid 30s, like even now I can relate to that. But definitely in my 20s of thinking of like just navigating relationships and life in that time and everything you go through. And I think so many people, maybe if they are older, they forget how tough it is just to exist right now. So I appreciate that. And even being, I guess, thinking about this record, if you were to put like a start here, I mean, of course, you want to start at the beginning and go through it, but if you wanted to put almost like a start here with this record to get a feel for it, what song would you guys each pick as like a sort of like start here with this one?
I think for me, like what I jump to immediately is like Dead Dog. And I think part of that is because it was like the first single we put out with the album, so it feels like it's got that weight to it already that that's kind of the song that we chose to kind of represent, what's coming for us. But also I think it is representative in many ways of like the feelings that are present on the album too, like kind of this feeling of longing and loss, but also like some gradual acceptance like towards the end of the song, like so that would be my answer.
Man, that's a better answer than I don't even know how to answer it because it was everything was like written at such different times. Yeah, I don't know. We'll just go with Ethan's answer.
Yeah, go with that one. Or you know what? Just do it all. Everybody just listening, just start here with all of them because I think, that is kind of, I guess, especially if they're probably all your baby in a way too, of like each one holds its special meaning for you. I don't want to speak for you, but it's like each one has its own way of. It's hard, probably. Yeah, that's probably really hard to pick. I don't even know why. But hey, listen, everybody just listen to it all. Like, forget about that. But
you should check out our music video for Dead Dog. That was like our first and only music video that we've made, but it's super pretty.
No, I wanted to see you caught me there because that was something I was seeing too. I wanted to ask that of how was creating that and kind of making it fit the theme and what you guys wanted it to look like for Dead Dog.
It was super fun. We worked with our friend Mikey Hardesty, who is really talented, and we just gave him some ideas. I was like, I need there to be dog masks in this video, and he came up with like a whole concept and schedule and locations and everything. So we had like very little to do with the actual, planning and shooting of it besides showing up and getting a bunch of props and stuff and getting our extras. But yeah, it was really fun. He did a really great job directing it.
Yeah, and I think music videos seem to be like a lost art, and some people are like, we don't need them, but I love them. I love to see that because I think music videos kind of really help. Yes, you have a song, but when you really see that music video, you can put a visual to what you're listening to. So I love a music video. So I appreciate that they're still making them. And I loved the video because I watched it too. I was like, this are the dogs. And I love that song too on there. I'm sure it's a fan favorite and everybody says that. But I think if I were to pick a favorite, that would be that. Or obviously Vegas, just because of how I feel right now, which again, good or bad thing. But obviously being in a band, you have your struggles. What would you say has been the biggest struggle for your band and how were you able to overcome that?
One thing that comes to mind is just like we were living in two different cities for a while. So that definitely made it harder to practice and just logistically made things a lot harder.
Yeah, there was a period of about 2 years, up until about a year ago, where the three of us weren't living in the same city. Like we were living about an hour and 15 minutes apart from each other.
More during rush hour for sure.
But just the physical distance that separated us, I think it prohibited us from like growing more as a band, and we couldn't practice regularly or even meet regularly.
And like writing too, I feel like it's harder when you're, you really got to dedicate time to do it when you just don't have the time to like get together on a whim.
But yeah, I mean, I guess the simple solution to solving that one was to all move to the same city. And yeah, Eliza graduated college like 2 years before me. So once I graduated, I moved up to Denver, and like now, yeah, like she said, we live together, and there's definitely more. There's like, like we'll just be at the table and be like, oh, what's going on with this show? Or like, when are we gonna
Hmm.
record this? Like we have this podcast later. Like how are we gonna prepare? Things like that. It's a lot easier, and yeah.
But yeah, we still have to be intentional about like scheduling things because otherwise we'll like all just have different plans at the time that we were gonna practice or whatever. So
Yeah, that has
definitely
to
still
be
requires that.
that has to be tough too. And like I think the scheduling people don't maybe think about that, right? Like if so many people are like, okay, maybe they just all get together, but no, like there's real lives, there's jobs, there's just again, maybe you're just having a bad day. And now it's like, okay, but we have to practice or we have to do this. So I think that is, and I mean, we're in this big too. What do you guys think about? We're in this big like TikTok Reels era where you have to be a content creator. Even I face that with this and like promoting the podcast. I'm like, I hate it. I wish I could just toss this out there and like it just gets there. How do you guys kind of handle that and navigate that? Because I think we're in such a world that they just want you to be this big content creator. So how do you balance that?
Probably not like super well. We haven't we've like put effort into creating content and stuff, but we haven't like I don't know, we're definitely not influencers or
Yeah.
anything. It's like I don't know. It's hard because you can put effort into stuff and put it out, but like it doesn't mean anybody's gonna see it, you
Right.
know?
And
Yeah.
like I don't know, there's like a balance I think that's involved with knowing that the industry is changing in such a way that like a big path towards success or a common path towards success now is through social media, right? Like, and I think there's a balance in like reconciling, like, okay, like we really want people to hear our music, but also we're musicians, we're not like actors or content creators, And I think we have like began to pivot a little bit towards like, okay, we want to make like a video, to promote the song, but also have it be representative of who we are as musicians and as a band. I think like that was something that was important and felt like necessary for me. It was like, okay, if we're going to be making content, it should be reflective of like what we believe and like how we see ourselves and want other people to see us, as opposed to like making like a 15-second reel about like guess our drummer or something like that,
Hmm.
like
Yeah, yeah, you see a lot of those. And again, to each their own, but I think if it's not you, you don't want to put that out there or do that. Like I think and I think your music speaks for itself where like it definitely stopped me in my tracks when I was looking into you guys and sitting there and like okay, like I get this. And I mean, we're in 2025, which is wild to think about. We're here. It's I feel like it's been so long, but it's only February for whatever the reason this year. It's like I feel like it's already been 3 months long. Um,
because Trump is president
yeah, yeah, that
now.
let's be real. That's probably, yeah, that's not probably why. That is why. Every day it feels like it's a year and it's not. And that's for you guys. What are you hoping to now that this record is out? Where would you like to see Tiny Tomboy go this year?
We've already got some stuff in the works. We're touring West Coast, which will be cool. We were like hoping to play some bigger shows, and we have one lined up for April, which is gonna be cool. So those are already like two of my big goals met, but
I think
few.
like on my side of things, like continuing to develop our sounds, we've talked a lot about like, how this is like kind of like just now we're like feeling comfortable as like a three-piece band, and like taking advantage of that, like we kind of know where each of us fits at this point, and the sound that we want to create. So just like continuing to develop that musical identity in our music. And then yeah, playing shows, playing good shows, having fun, like
And I definitely also just want to get back like heavy into writing, because I don't know, I haven't felt inspired much in the past like year even. and just been working on finishing the album. So now we'll finally have time to write some new stuff because we've been playing these songs for too long already.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And like, how do you kind of, when you're not feeling inspired, if there's a moment or time, how do you sort of tap in and I guess get inspired to be able to write?
It's kind of hard, but one thing I do is like I'll read back through my like journal and go back in time to when I was feeling some type of way, kind of bring myself back into that space and write about that. And then another thing is,
Re-traumatize
yeah,
yourself.
I just like to re-traumatize myself every now
Yeah.
and again. Yeah, it's kind of hard to do, honestly. It's like, I don't know, I was like going through some stuff this summer that I was reading back through that and I was like, damn, I don't want to think about this at all. And then also just like playing guitar by myself, I usually end up coming up with something after a while.
It's almost like re-traumatizing yourself, I'm sure, in a way. And while we as listeners are like, yes, we get it, someone gets us, but like, you don't maybe consider if that was me, if that were me going through things and I could write or I could play in a band, yeah, that would definitely be opening up those wounds to do that. But I guess I don't know. I don't want to speak for anyone, but it's almost like I guess I want to say the perk or the joy of it is like then a listener maybe can feel less alone. Like, hey, I get this. Like somebody gets it, and put it in a way maybe they where they couldn't. So I think that, but yeah, still not fun re-traumatizing yourself at all. And before I let you guys go, and I've loved having you on, where can everybody find you? I'll have all links below for everything for everybody to check out Tiny Tomboy. But if someone wants to listen, where the best place? Where are the best places to check you guys out and your music?
Could do Spotify, Apple Music, Bandcamp, we're on there. I think we're on
Yeah, we're
all the
on the major
platforms.
streaming platforms under Tiny Tomboy, and then on the socials we're Tiny Tomboy Band.
It was so nice to meet you guys and talk about your band, and I'm excited to put this one out.
Yeah, thank you for having us,
Yeah,
Lisa.
thank you so much.
Shout out to our drummer, Sam Seymour.
Yes.
He's at work right now, but we're thinking about him.
Always thinking about him.
Yes, I was gonna ask. I assumed probably work, or something like that. But yeah, this was great. So I know I'll be pushing your stuff because I really love it, and I think that's what's so cool about this podcast is I can find these bands that I normally probably wouldn't have found. So I think it's really really cool. And I think it was a Hunter.
Yeah,
Hunter,
Mhm.
yeah. He
the
was
hunter.
really wonderful and reached out to me and was like, here you go. And I was like, and I remember just sending it, he sent me an email and I listened to it right away. I was like, this, yes. So again, thank you for taking time for me and coming on.
Yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And all right, guys, that was my conversation with Eliza and Ethan of Tiny Tomboy. This was such a great one, and I think it definitely came at a time that I personally needed a great conversation. I was sick all of February for some reasons, so for me to get to sit down and talk music and get to know a new band, Tiny Tomboy was a new band to me, and to get to dive into what they're about and do that research of learning about the band, and then getting to sit down with Ethan and Eliza and learning more about them. So it was such a great conversation surrounding mental health and what songwriters do and how music truly is so cathartic to these songwriters. And I think as we listen to these songs and as we have our own opinion of these songs, to hear the songwriter talk about it and how cathartic it can be, that's always a great conversation to have and for us as we listen to think about. So again, all links below. Please check out Tiny Tomboy. I would love for you to check them out and let me know what you think. I would love to hear that. As for our show, we will be back next week with a brand new episode of Horse. And I just want to highlight to you, starting in April, we're going to be going every other week. I am going through a move right now and just a lot of personal stuff. And I'm really, really busy with that in moving. And anyone that knows, I don't want to take away from the quality of our show. So I want to make sure that the quality is still there while I'm moving. So that'll just be for a little bit. So every other week that will start. But I wanted to put that out there for anyone listening. But as for our show, if you could go ahead and subscribe to our show, it would mean a lot. Follow us. It's the easiest way to support our show and shows like ours. And we will see you guys next time. All right. Bye, guys.